Doom. Is it the best game of all time? Nah, but it's pretty close. Popularizing the first-person shooter genre and giving early internet Christians something to be mad about, it's hard to find a person of my generation that hasn't played this game in one form or another at least once. Doom was also one of the early shareware hits, and the first episode is about as common as lint. That being said, let's look at 10 facts about Doom. The name of the game comes from the movie The Color of Money, in which Tom Cruise's character showed up to a pool hall with his own custom-made pool cue in a case. Another character asks him what's in the case. His reply? Doom. If you've played Doom or its sequels and are a heavy metal fan, you'll notice many, if not all, the songs in the game have a striking resemblance to real songs by bands such as Metallica, Alice in Chains, Slayer, and others. Sometimes they merely have some similarities, while at other times they sound practically note for note. The music in Doom was done by Bobby Prince, which has led to a catchphrase among some Doom fans: Bobby Prince is a dirty thief. How did they get away with it? Before Bobby Prince was making music for video games, he was a lawyer, and he knew precisely how much he had to change a song to not get sued. The original plans for Doom were quite different than what we got. Some things, like a score and treasures to collect, were holdovers from id Software's Wolfenstein games, while others were simply too ambitious for the time, such as having several distinct characters to choose from with all but their own personalities and attributes. One of the cut weapons, a super powerful artifact made from demon bones known as the Unmaker, would show up in many player-made mods, as well as officially in the fourth game, Doom 64. Easily the toughest enemy in the game is the Cyberdemon, who shows up as the final boss of the game's second episode, On the Shores of Hell, and appears a few times in the third and fourth episodes. However, the Cyberdemon doesn't have nearly as many hit points as you might think. Most players will instinctively use rockets on him, and the game itself seems to encourage this, as the first Cyberdemon encounter gives you lots and lots of rocket ammo. However, the Cyberdemon takes significantly less damage from rockets than most other enemies, due to the fact that the Cyberdemon is completely immune to splash damage. You see, when rockets strike an enemy, they explode, and the enemy not only takes the set amount of damage that rockets do, but also damage from the explosion, which varies depending on the size of the enemy and their position in reference to the blast radius, which also can and will damage or destroy nearby enemies, hazards such as barrels, or even the player. As the Cyberdemon itself uses rockets, they are made immune to the blast radius of rockets, so they can't damage themselves or fall victim to player exploits like trapping a Cyberdemon behind a barrier, having it continually damage itself. For this reason, the Plasma Gun, or the BFG, make far better weapons against the Cyberdemon. Interestingly, despite not using rockets, the game's final boss, the Spider Demon Mastermind, is also immune to blast damage. Now, there's also the BFG, which also seems to heavily rely on blast damage as it can easily clear tons of enemies. However, the mechanics behind the BFG are way more complex and far more interesting than a simple explosion. Here's how it works. First, for a cost of 40 plasma rounds and a delay of about a second, the weapon is fired. A large ball of energy is projected forward. Interestingly, it's a little-known fact that BFG rounds travel at the same speed as plasma gun blasts. Anyway, the actual shot does a lot of damage, but it has no blast radius. Rather, after it strikes something, whether it's an enemy, an obstacle, or a wall, a large amount of invisible energy beams are fired from the player's position, striking enemies in a wedge-shaped radius. This is why the damage of the BFG blast is so inconsistent and situational. It all depends on how many of the invisible rays each enemy is struck by, which depends largely on how big the sprite is and how close they are to the player. Where it becomes really interesting is that the invisible rays only fire once the initial blast strikes something. So between the initial firing of the weapon and when the rays fire, you can move. And the rays always come from the character's position. So it's possible, and a frequent tactic of well-versed Doomers, to fire the BFG at an enemy, or even purposefully at a wall, and then quickly move to damage other enemies further away. Doing this makes it possible to destroy the final boss with one blast. However, though you can change your position, the rays will always fire in the same direction the BFG was originally fired in, so you can't turn around and hit stuff behind you. Originally, the secondary rays were supposed to be visible, but the effect was found to be too taxing on PCs of the day. Did you know that Doom is actually a 2D game? The first-person view is a representation of what actually behaves more as a top-down game. For this reason, verticality rarely comes into play, and is used strictly for aesthetics. If an enemy is on a ledge high above you, the game treats you as being right in front of him, which is why the game appears to have vertical auto-aim. The enemy's position to you is only measured on the X and Y axis. The Z axis is pretty much just for show. Because of this, hitboxes like a rocket explosion are not a sphere as you'd expect, but rather a cylinder, which is why if a lost soul is flying high up in the air near a wall, firing a rocket at the wall directly below it will damage it, even if it seems really far from the visible explosion. One of the most iconic visuals from Doom is the Doom guy's face, which, just like in Wolfenstein, was an easy visual indication of how healthy you are, and would also react to certain situations, usually firing a weapon or taking damage. There is, however, a facial expression that was seen only very rarely due to a programming error. This pained expression of shock was supposed to show whenever you take heavy damage, such as being hit by a rocket, resulting in more than 25% damage in one strike. However, it was accidentally programmed to only happen with a gain of 25% health or more, but the programming still only worked if Doomguy was taking a hit. So it would only display on the very rare and specific circumstance of getting hit at the exact moment you picked up a soul sphere. As long as you picked up the item and got hurt at the same time, and the gain was still at least 25%, and it was an attack that would normally do 25% damage or more, you'd see this face. Modern source ports such as ZDoom or GZDoom correct this error, so you'll see the face more often in the proper circumstances. Doom's fourth episode, Thy Flesh Consumed, was added to a re-release of the game known as The Ultimate Doom. The names of the 8 standard levels in the additional scenario were assigned by John Romero and were all taken from the Christian Bible, specifically the King James Version. Episode 4, Map 1, Hell Beneath, is taken from Proverbs 15:24. Episode 4, Map 2, Perfect Hatred, is taken from Psalm 139:22. Episode 4, Map 3, Sever the Wicked, is taken from Matthew 13:49. Episode 4, Map 4, Unruly Evil, is taken from James 3:8. Episode 4, Map 5, They Will Repent, is taken from Luke 16:30. Episode 4, Map 6, Against Thee Wickedly, is taken from Psalm 139:20. Episode 4, Map 7, And Hell Followed, is taken from Revelation 6:8. Episode 4, Map 8, Unto the Cruel, is taken from Proverbs 5:9. The actual title of the episode, Thy Flesh Consumed, also came from the Bible, Proverbs 5:11. The secret level is merely called Fear, and is the obvious exception to this theme. Have you ever heard a sound effect from Doom in a movie, a TV series, or even on the news? It's very common, and not just limited to sound effects from the first game. For example, I hear sound effects from Doom 64 in movies all the time, but by far the most common sound effect used are the sounds of doors opening and closing. This is because the Doom series uses a lot of sound effects from the General Series 6000 sound effects library, a royalty-free resource that you can buy, which is so extensive that it comes on 40 CDs and is over 50 hours long. It's still for sale for $995. Anyone with the Scratch can use these sound effects to their heart's content without paying royalties. It's just that so many of us associate these sound effects specifically with Doom that it's always amusing to hear them in other media. Finally, let's clear this up once and for all. BFG stands for Big Fucking Gun. as this was the name that was given to it during development. Any other interpretation, such as Bioforce Gun, came about later. Yes, Big Fucking Gun is not a fan nickname, it is the official name of the weapon, as named by id Software themselves. Yes, the movie got it wrong. Are you shocked?